Yeah, this was kind of challenging, trying to get this aluminum to perfectly fit flush with the fiberglass. The reason I do this is you don't want to have a hot expansion chamber right next to fiberglass, so therefore I had to cut a 1-inch gap all the way around this fiberglass, therefore hopefully the fiberglass doesn't get hot next to this expansion chamber, but I don't want visually a giant gaping hole in this fiberglass with this expansion chamber sticking out, so I just put this aluminum cover over it to kind of just make it look a little bit better. While it's not perfect, I tried to get these, the top and bottom, to line up perfectly with each other. They're not perfect, but from a distance, I think it looks fine. So, next thing is let's clean these carburetors. They're definitely pretty filthy, and they have a bunch of really old gas in them. Now, I'm trying to figure out, do I need to change the jets now that I'm running premix gas and not regular gas with an oil pump with this 2-stroke engine? Now, I remember having to change the jets when I originally had this engine in the 2-stroke triple yard kart project, and I just took these two apart to figure out what those jets are, and right now they're 210. I think stock is around 240, so... because I'm not sure if, now that I'm running premix gas, is that going to change the air-fuel mixture, because it's now less gas in the gas, because it's now mixed with oil, and I don't know. So I'm just going to leave it how it is. You know what, if we have to tune this thing later on, we're just going to have to tune it later on, but let's just first get it running right now. So let's clean these carburetors, let's get them back installed in the engine, and then we can hook up the throttle pedal to the carburetors. Now, originally I thought that I bought a carburetor rebuild kit for this thing, but turns out that I forgot to, and I realized that yesterday, so I bought it yesterday. Definitely is not here in time, so I mainly bought it for the gaskets, because the gaskets on here definitely look pretty bad. I'm not going to touch them, not going to try to pull them, because I think if I try to pull it out, I'm just going to rip them. Hopefully they're fine, hopefully they won't leak, but once the carburetor rebuild kit gets here, if these do end up leaking, then I'll replace the gaskets. But right now we're just cleaning these. Whoops, I forgot to hit record. Dang it. All I did was I installed the pulse pump, and I'm realizing that the fuel lines going to this carburetor and this carburetor are a little too short. So let me cut some longer ones. Now originally this pulse pump is mounted right here, but I moved it down here, so therefore it's underneath the fiberglass. Now, before I take this wiring harness and cut it all apart and get rid of all the stuff we don't need, I first just want to make sure it's working. So I hooked it up to the engine, I pulled the spark plugs out just so we can make sure it is getting a spark and it is working. So I think the key is on this, I think is the kill switch. Nice! And it's working! That one's getting a spark. That one's getting a spark. Let's see what happens when I flip this off. Yeah, now it's not getting a spark. So, alright, this is the kill switch. And all 3 spark plugs, all 3 of them are working. So, alright, so now that we know the wiring is working, let me go through this whole wiring harness, cut apart all this stuff, because there's a lot of stuff in here like grip heaters and oil tank level sensors that we don't need anymore. So let me cut all that stuff out. Alright, so I think I'm figuring this out, because right now it's just a bunch of wiring that is just coming in. I'm trying to figure out which ones to go to the voltage regulator. I need to somehow connect this yellow wire, but then it also goes to these, and then the yellow and red wire, which are brown. So I just need one of the brown wires and then one of the yellow wires to connect to the pink and yellow wires of this. Then this goes to battery, this goes to ground, and I think that'll work, hopefully. Alright, let me neaten up this wiring a little bit, and then half of the wiring is done. Yeah, I should have paid a little bit more attention to the lengths of wire, because I kind of had to bundle it up right here, just so it's not all over the place. Now, I decided to mount this stuff all on the side right here, because originally I was going to do the switches here, like on the Baja Bug, but actually, I tested it, I put the seat in here, sat in here, and with the fiberglass body, I actually can't see this bar, so I just decided to put everything kind of right here, and there's enough space for it right here now. This is obviously the key to the engine. This turns on and off the engine. This one is the temperature gauge. This one is obviously the radiator fan. And then this switch down here engages four-wheel drive. Now, these two that are empty right now, this one's for the headlights whenever I install that. Then this one is for the gearbox, shifter, gear selector, lights and everything that I'm going to mount in these spots right here. So, now, wiring is basically done. Or not basically done, it's half done, but it's enough to at least get the engine running. So now let's work on installing the gas tank and hooking that up, and then seeing if we can get this engine to fire up. So something I realized last night is I forgot to put a fuse between the battery and these switches. So this red wire just connects to these three switches, and I cut the wire off to install a fuse on here. I'm not really sure how big of a fuse I should do, but so I'm just gonna put a 30 amp fuse in here. It may be a little overkill, but it's at least we have a fuse on this in case anything shorts out. Alright, got the gas tank installed and hooked up to the pulse pump. Now I did put a fuel shutoff valve on both sides of this gas tank, so therefore we can use one side of the gas tank as a reserve if we want to. Now I think this vehicle is finally at the point where we can now put fluids in this and see if we can get this engine running. Let's put gas in the gas tank, coolant in the radiator, and hopefully this engine will fire up. Now, we do have 2 radiator caps on this. This engine already has a radiator cap, but the radiator has a You're supposed to have a radiator cap at the highest point. I kind of just left this one, and what I did is I just blocked it off. So the coolant overflow on this one is just sealed off, and the coolant overflow on this one is going to the coolant overflow tank. Now, to fill this up, I'm going to first fill it up from this one, just so I make sure there's no air bubbles in here, and then I'll fill it all the way up from this one. And I will also drill a tiny little hole on top of this just so it can vent properly. I also need to do that to the gas tank. Well, we have our first leak. So the O-rings on the top of this are leaking pretty badly. I had to put the spark plugs in just to try to keep the water going into the cylinders. Yeah, it's leaking right here. This is leaking. Okay, well at least it's easy to get to and hopefully easy to fix. And of course, draining coolant is always makes a mess. Awesome. Yep, and it's dripping right here pretty badly. Where's that coming from? Awesome. Okay, let me drain the coolant on this, which always makes a mess, because I think I just need to pull that and just let it spill everywhere. And I need to do it quickly, so therefore a bunch of water doesn't get in the cylinders. I really need to figure out a better way to drain the coolant from this, because right now the only way to do it is just by doing this, which makes an absolute mess. Oh. Well, some of it landed in the bucket. Now, in case it wasn't clear, where it was leaking from is basically this purple cover. I keep wanting to call it a valve cover. It's not a valve cover, it's two-stroke. This top cylinder cover, whatever it's called, basically there's a seal right here all the way around this, and it was basically leaking from all sides. Now, it was leaking really badly on this side, and also this hole right here for the spark plugs, it was leaking pretty badly out of those, so yep, already having issues. So let's take this cover off and figure out how to fix it. So one thing that's a little weird with this O-ring so this is the new one. And when I was installing this, I'm like, hang on, wait a minute. There's these weird nubs that are sticking out on the sealing surface on the top. And I'm like, how is that gonna seal properly? So, and then I thought like, oh, it's just a cheap O-ring. So let me grab the original one and just use that. Then I looked at the original one. It's like, hang on, wait a minute. It has the same things. And it's all the way around it. Let me show you. If this camera would focus. There it goes. So this top is the sealing surface, but see how there's this nub that's sticking out on the top. And it's like, well, how is that gonna seal properly? And I'm like, well, the original one has it, so maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's designed like that. So I just put it on here, but sure enough, it's leaking everywhere. So to solve this, I had some Honda Bond, and Honda Bond fixes everything. I'm gonna clean this off and get all the coolant off of this. I think I'm gonna still use the new O-ring, but I'm just gonna slather it with Honda Bond. I'm also gonna put bigger O-rings on these because these O-rings are a little bit small. And I'm also gonna put some Honda Bond on these, and hopefully that will fix this. I don't know, I know it's not the right thing to do, but you know what? What else am I gonna do? It popped. I'm using a pair of pliers to squeeze it because it's kind of cold. All right, it's a bit of a mess, but this should hopefully make it to where it doesn't leak. Now, I'm gonna let this sit for a couple hours just to help cure before I put coolant back in here. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't test to see if it's running or not. We just can't run it for long because there's no coolant in here. So let's put some gas in the gas tank. Let's get the gas to the carburetors and see if this thing will fire up. Hopefully we don't have any issues with the gas tank leaking. I already did a pressure test on this, but I don't know if any of the fuel lines, hopefully the pulse pump doesn't leak or anything like that. So, and this is a 40-to-1 mix of oil and gas. It's the same stuff I use in the mini Baja Bug project. Alright, so I did verify that gas is getting to the carburetors. So 15 weeks of working on this thing, and now it's time to finally see if this thing will fire up. I think it's in neutral. Alright, now it's in park. It's going to be a little challenging trying to start this thing on the table. Oh man. Ouch. Yeah, it's a little challenging trying to start this on a table. Okay, maybe let's get this thing off the table. Wow. Man, this thing is so much smaller once it's off the table. Alright, turn the fuel back on. So far, nothing is leaking out of the carburetors, which is good. So, alright, double check. It's in park. I don't want this thing taking off. So it's on, that's on. Here goes nothing. Let me turn the choke on just for reasons. Oh. Come on. Come on. Ah. It's wanting to go. Ah. Come on. Ooh. I'm gonna turn the choke all the way on. Apparently you're not really supposed to need choke in these. I mean, it's 61 degrees out, but you know, for me it seems like it wants choke. Come on. Ooh. Ah, it runs. It runs. So remember, I can't run it for long because there's no coolant in here. So it is always good having something finally fire up after weeks and weeks of work. Now, it has been a couple hours since I put the Honda Bond on. I mean, it feels dry. So I think it's fine. Let's put some coolant in this thing so we can run it for a little bit longer. Because I want to see, you know, the tires spin up. I want to test the four-wheel drive. I want to see what high range looks like, what low range looks like. So I'm also going to put it on jack stands. So I'm only going to fill it up with water right now just to test to see if it's holding. I'm actually going to pressurize just a little bit, not much. Ah, you gotta be kidding me. Ah, really? So I didn't see any leaking around this. I don't see any water on the spark plug holes, which is awesome, but I did see water leaking out of this triangle gasket right here. So let me drain the coolant again. I'll take this off and then put some Honda Bond on that. Yeah, so this gasket was leaking, and I'm not really sure why, so I'm just going to slather it with Honda Bond and hope that fixes it. So, something that Honda Bond said is it said to not put it on copper. Now, I'm pretty sure this is copper. I mean, it looks like copper, it's non-magnetic. So what I used instead, I don't know why Honda Bond says not to put it on copper, so I used this stuff. This is just ultra black gasket maker. I do realize that this is probably not the right way to do this, but you know what? At this point, I don't really care. I just want this thing to run. So it's been at least 12 hours since I did this. The gasket maker that I used for this top, it says to wait at least 24 hours, but you know what? I don't feel like waiting that long. I think 12 hours is long enough. Alright, so it's finally not leaking coolant. It's been about 10 minutes and I don't see a drop anywhere, so let's try to fire this thing up again. That's on, that's on. runs good. Why is four-wheel drive engaging when I don't have the switch on? I also forgot to check to see if my tachometer is working. Alright, tachometer is not working. I don't know why. Oh, it sounds good! Alright, so... yeah, even in high... so that was high range. Even in high range, it doesn't look very fast, I'll admit. So... it's running good. It is running good. I have no idea why four-wheel drive is engaging when the switch for four-wheel drive is not on. So it got up to 113 degrees, which is good, and I don't have the radiator fan on. Yeah, low range looks really, really slow, so I'm not really sure how usable low range is. I'm really curious how fast this is going to go in high range, so... Alright, let's see what this thing can do. As much as I would love to drive this thing around for the first time, my yard's not big enough, and I don't really want to annoy my neighbors too much, but I can kind of drive back and forth in front of the shop and kind of get a feel for how this thing accelerates, because I'm really curious how fast this is with high range and low range, because my fear is, even in high range, this thing's not that fast with how much gear reduction is in the gearbox, making it to where low range is basically useless. But remember, we can change the gearing by just changing the sprocket sizes between the jack shaft and the gearbox, but we just kind of need to figure out, do we need to do that, and if we do need to do that, by how much? So yeah, at least we can kind of get a feel for how this thing accelerates in high range and low range, and kind of get an idea for how fast this thing's going to be. Come on. Come on. Holy crap. Alright, this thing definitely has power. Oh, wow. Oh, I made a mess in the shed. Again. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, low range is definitely slow. I mean, it's slow. It'll still move, but I don't know. It's really hard to try to figure out the top speed of this thing by just like driving it forward for 2 seconds. So we really need to take this thing somewhere to really see the speed of this thing. So I want to test the 4-wheel drive on this just to kind of see, you know, I don't know. I want to see this thing doing something, and we can't really drive it. So let's just, you know, I chained it to the back of a tree, and let's just see all the tires spinning and throw a bunch of dirt somewhere. I don't know. Alright, I think I tortured my neighbors enough. Oh, this thing is fun. I got so much dirt in my hair. I have no idea what that accomplished, but I hope it looks cool. Oh man, this thing's cool. Yeah, I gotta say, I am super impressed with how well this engine's running. It's easy to start, it's not overheating, and it doesn't bog heavily on the throttle, unlike the Mini Baja Bug project when I first got that thing running. It was a nightmare to start, it got really hot really fast, and if I just hit the throttle too fast, it would just do that like immediately, like, oh, just bogging heavily, and it still doesn't run right. Now, I'm trying to think, what are the differences between this engine and the engine on the Mini Baja Bug project? It's the same engine, they're both rebuilt. They have the exact same expansion chamber and muffler. The only difference is the carburetors. These are round slide carburetors that are slightly less complicated, and the other carburetors are flat slide. They're like built into one piece, and they're more complicated. There's a third jet in the carburetors for some reason. So I'm slightly tempted to buy these kind of carburetors for that project and just see if that fixes the running issues. I don't know. It may be worth it just to try because this thing runs really, really well. Now, a couple issues we have with this is the tachometer is not working for some reason. Maybe some of the wiring harness that I cut off is needed to run the tachometer properly. Hopefully I didn't burn it out or break it or something. But also the four-wheel drive kept engaging even though the switch that I have that turns it on wasn't on, but it was still engaging for some reason. So I gotta figure out why it's doing that. And I really want to make sure the engine is properly charging the battery. But the more I think about it, it's like this engine was never really designed to charge a battery. So I need to check to make sure it's pushing enough amperage to charge these batteries properly. So anyway, now that this thing's running, I am dying to take this thing somewhere to really see what this thing can do because I don't really consider that like a first test drive. We didn't really drive it. I'm trying to show what this thing can do in the tiny little yard that I have. The only area that I can tear up is in front of my shop, and I'm trying not to be super loud and obnoxious for all my neighbors around me, so we really need to take this thing somewhere else to really see what this thing can do. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon, but for now that this thing's running and driving, I'm going to put it to the side, and I'm going to start working on the cross kart project with the Kawasaki Ninja H2 engine. I have been dying to start working on that project. But I guess for this video, I guess that's it. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.